to the radio. I was driving back home from North Carolina. That was burned. Yeah, that's why they fired Mark. Because he would lose games like that every year. Down his real home, I think. I do too. I do too.
Good evening. Welcome to the November 13th meeting of your Aiken City Council. If you would, please rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time. Father, as we've enjoyed the weather that you've given us and this day that you've given us, we just are once again reminded of the city that we live in. And for those of us who are here, we just appreciate the opportunity to serve it. We just pray, Lord, that you'd bless this body, that the decisions we make would be pleasing to you, give wisdom beyond our own means. We thank you for the citizens of our city, which do so much, who make up the beauty of Aiken. We also, Lord, remember the veterans, and we thank you for all those who are serving now, those who have served and those who are currently, Father. May it not just be Veterans Day, but every day that we say thank you. It is in your name we pray and give all the glory. Amen.
Amen.
Chief Frank could have come up and lead us in our prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to go over the guidelines for the Aiken City Council meetings. Meetings are public forums in which many opinions are expressed and the business of the city must be conducted. As such, disciplined, honorable, and professional decorum is paramount. Courteous and respectful communication is certainly expected. During public hearings, all questions and statements from the public shall be directed to the chair. And if you wish to speak, raise your hand and I will recognize you. Please approach the podium and state your name and address. In order to allow an opportunity for everyone who wishes to address council, speakers should limit their comments to the subject being discussed. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to address an issue and may only address an issue once unless questions from council are posed to the speaker. With that, I'll recognize our Mayor Pro Temp for additions and deletions to the agenda. Councilman Edward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any additions or changes to the council agenda tonight? Yes, sir.
I'd like to add to the agenda a proclamation related to the Joy in Aiken function.
All right. Anything else?
Continue under petitions and requests. Number 1, request to spend capital project sales tax money for Hitchcock Woods storm water project. I'd like to continue that to our next meeting, please.
All right. Any other changes? Mr. City Attorney, you have those noted, please?
I do, Your Honor.
All right. With the 2 changes that have been made, I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Very good. And we will make the proclamation from Mr. Hamoki under presentations number 3.
Okay.
Thank you. The minutes of our previous meeting were handed out to council members earlier for their review. Is there a motion to accept as presented?
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to presentations. Number 1 is presentation of GFOA budget award for the 2017-18 budget. Any comments, Mr. Clem?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The City of Aiken, for the 2nd year, has received the Government Finance Officers Association's Budget Award. Ms. Angela Gunter, former GFOA board member, is present and will present a medallion to add to the marble plaque that we received last year as the first-year recipient of the award. City staff team members led by Director Abney worked very hard in designing and gathering information for the budget. The information was combined into a usable communication tool for City Council, citizens, and staff. The budget was submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association for review and critique, and the City of Aiken received the budget award for the GFOA for its second year's submittal. In South Carolina, Aiken is one of only 11 municipalities in the entire state to be awarded this distinction. Less than 4% of South Carolina municipalities and less than 2% of all local governments in the entire United States earn the Distinguished Budget Award. Staff is to be commended for its work in obtaining this outstanding budget award for the City of Aiken. And as you know, Mr. Mayor, we have Ms. Gunter here with Ms. Abney for additional comments.
Ms. Gunter, welcome again. It's always nice to see you in the audience.
I'm very honored to be able to be with y'all again to present this on behalf of the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. The award represents a significant achievement by the city. It reflects the commitment of the governing body and the staff to meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting. In order to receive this award, the entity had to satisfy nationally recognized guidelines for effective budget presentation. These guidelines are designed to assess how well an entity's budget serves as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communication device. Budget documents must be rated proficient in all 4 of those categories and in the 14 mandatory criteria within those categories to receive the award. There's over 1,600 participants in that, and as Mr. Clem said, you know, that's 1 out of 11 in the state municipalities get it. So, I mean, that y'all are only 1 out of 11. So we're very, very proud to be able to present this to you.
Thank you. Kim, you want to join me up front?
And if you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like Kimberly Weed. I found an answer because they could have done it without her and all the department directors and all their assistants. Thank you.
Kim, I hate to say that you've done such a good job that we now expect excellence, but you've done such a good job, I think now we just expect excellence. So congratulations for you and the staff. What a great honor that is. Number 2 is a proclamation designating November as Veterans and Military Families Month. I'd recognize Councilman DeWar at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proclamation. Whereas President Donald Trump signed a proclamation at the White House enlarging upon the traditional Veterans Day recognition on November 11th and urged the nation to set aside the entire month of November to show honor to veterans, and whereas Americans across the country are encouraged to acknowledge and honor the service, sacrifices, and contributions of veterans and military families for what they have done and for what they do every day to support our great nation. Whereas America has stood as a beacon of hope and opportunity, and few embody that spirit here at home and beyond our borders more than members of the armed forces. These men and women are part of an unbroken chain of brave patriots who have served our country with honor and made tremendous sacrifices so that we may live free. On Veterans Day in the month of November, we salute the women and men who have proudly worn the uniform of the United States of America and the families who have served alongside them. And we affirm our sacred duty as citizens to express our enduring gratitude both in words and in actions for their service. And whereas the example of our nation's veterans set throughout their lives is a testament to the drive and perseverance that define the American character, let us uphold our obligations to these heroic individuals and never forget those who paid the ultimate price for our liberty. Throughout the year, may we sustain their lasting contributions to our nation's progress, and carry forward their legacy by building a future that is stronger, safer, and freer for all. Whereas this month, in which Americans traditionally pause to give thanks for our blessings, it is fitting that we come together to honor with gratitude our extraordinary veterans and military families and their service to our country. May God continue to bless our armed forces and those families that love and support them. Now, therefore, I, Rick N. Osmond, Mayor and City Council of the City of Aiken, South Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of November as Veterans and Military Families Month, and encourages all citizens to recognize the valor and sacrifice of our veterans and express our enduring gratitude, both in words and actions, for their service. It's signed by the Mayor and all members of the Council. I'd like to make one additional comment, if I might, Mr. Mayor. The South Carolina Military Base Task Force has also determined the annual economic impact of military to the state of South Carolina. And many would be shocked to realize that it's $24.1 billion, which consists of 181,000 jobs and $9.9 billion in labor income. The benefit to the state from tourism is only $20 billion. So there's a significant benefit to the state of South Carolina from the military, so I endorse the proclamation that we need to recognize and appreciate them every day of the year for their efforts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman DeWar. Appreciate that. And we'll be presenting that proclamation to the senior officer with the South Aiken ROTC in an event Wednesday morning. Number 3 is a proclamation. I'm going to recognize Councilman Hamoki for. Councilman.
Thank you. Proclamation. Whereas Tony-nominated actor and vocalist Norm Lewis is a world famous for his history-making turn as Broadway's first African-American Phantom in Phantom of the Opera, as well as for starring roles in Les Miserables, in concert, the 25th anniversary, then Porgy and Bess, Sweeney Todd, and ABC's Scandal. And whereas he appeared as the headliner for the finale concert of the 2017 Joe and Aiken Festival in March 2017, delighting local audiences with his personal warmth and kindness, as well as with his spectacular talent. And whereas he conducted a master class in Music Gold Theater for area students as part of the Joy and Aiken Educational Outreach Program, generously sharing his professional experience and insight to the great and lasting benefit of the students. And whereas his participation in the Joy and Aiken Festival and Outreach Program brought recognition to our city as an important cultural destination and helped enrich the cultural environment of our region. And whereas the members of the Aiken community take great pride and pleasure in claiming him as one of their own. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Rick Osmond, Mayor of the City of Aiken, on behalf of City Council and the citizens of Aiken, do hereby proclaim Norm Lewis an honorary citizen of Aiken with all the benefits accruing thereto.
Thank you, Steve. And I think we have some members from Joy we might could present this to.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clem, and especially Steve Hamoki, let me just take this opportunity to thank you for this opportunity to make Norm Lewis an honorary citizen. I would love to tell you that his agent told us that of all the places he performed last year, Aiken was his favorite. So we are excited to welcome him as an honorary citizen, and we'll work very hard to get him back soon. And we have a board member, Z. Hamoki, Steve's wife. Can we have one more picture with Mrs. Hamoki up here?
Nepotism starts again.
Can we have one more picture with that? She is a board member as well, so.
Thank you, and we do appreciate all that Joy and Aiken brings to our city. As I was walking up, Councilman Ebner just reminded me, and I think it would be great. Since it was Veterans Day, could we recognize our veterans who are in attendance at this time? If you'd stand if you were a veteran, please. On behalf of the city, we just want to say thank you for your service. Moving down to old business, number 1, this is approval of appointments and discussion of appointees to various city boards, commissions, and committees. We'll look for comments from staff.
Mr. Mayor, the council has 19 pending appointments to fill vacancies on different city boards, commissions, and committees. 2 appointments are presented for council's consideration and vote this evening. Council Member Dwyer has recommended the reappointment of Charles Herbst to the Design Review Board. If reappointed, the term would expire December 31st, 2019. Councilwoman Diggs has recommended the reappointment of Susan DeBuell to the Planning Commission. If reappointed, the term would expire December 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a motion to? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any names to consider for our next meeting?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 appointments to recommend with the Board of Zoning and Appeals. Larry Ogletree, reappointment to that board. With the Planning Commission, Charles Matthews, reappointed to that board. And the Recreation Committee, John Wallace, be reappointed to that board.
Thank you, Councilwoman Price. Any other appointees this time? Thank you. Number 2 under old business is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex and zone property at 433 East Pine Log Road owned by Charita Grant. By title, this is an ordinance to annex property owned by Charita Grant and to zone the same residential single-family RS-10. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, sir. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, pursuant to the city's water and sewer annexation policy, the owner of 433 East Pine Log Road is asking for annexation and zoning as residential single family. The property is located at the corner of East Pine Log Road and Randolph Street. The Planning Commission at their meeting on October 10th considered this request for annexation and unanimously recommended that the property be annexed and zoned residential single family. City Council approved this ordinance on first reading at their October 30th meeting. For City Council consideration, a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex property at 433 East Pine Log Road and zone it residential single family.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton. Comments from the audience? Comments from council? Okay. All those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 3 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to rezone property at 103 Thomas Street to Office Institutional O. By title, an ordinance amending the zoning of real estate owned by Joe and Gladys Norman from residential single family RS8 to Office Institutional zoning O. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Ebner, Councilwoman Price. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the applicant and the owners of 103 Thomas Street in Silver Bluff Estates are requesting that the property be rezoned from residential single family to office. And approval of the rezoning request, the Sheila Haldizos plans to purchase the property and open a hair salon. The Planning Commission at their October 10th, 2017 meeting considered the request for rezoning. After review, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended to Council that the property be rezoned to office institutional. City Council approved this ordinance on first reading at the October 30th meeting. For City Council consideration is second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to rezone property at 103 Thomas Street from residential single family to office institutional.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. You step up here. Good evening.
I'm Brenda McKinney from McKinney Realty.
Hey, Ms. McKinney, and if you would, if you'd state your address, please.
My address, my home address is 17 Oak Place in Aiken.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I represent Sheila Haldios, and I just would like to say that this property has been vacant for 2 years, approximately 2 years. I think that she will really make it look nice. It will be a good place for her. It's right behind the Kroger's area. It does have 3 streets there. Previously, some years ago, it was Gladys's tailoring shop, and then she put it back to residential. She has paid to have the city sewer and go into the city, and I just would think it would be a good fit for Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Any other comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Congratulations. Moving down to new business, section 4. Number 1 is first reading of an ordinance for the issuance of water and sewer system revenue bonds. By title, a series ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of water and sewer system revenue bonds to be designated Series 2017B in the principal amount of not exceeding $4,500,000 of the City of Aiken, South Carolina, and other matters relating thereto. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the issuance and sale of the water and sewer system revenue bond at $4.5 million.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Price. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, as part of our downtown infrastructure improvements project, we have for council consideration a series of revenue bonds to be paid from budgeted water and sewer fees collected from our customers. These bonds are for an amount not to exceed $4.5 million and will allow us to pay for the costs of engineering, design, and construction of certain improvements to the water and sewer infrastructure, including water main replacements in the downtown area, valve and hydrant improvements, improvements to the Banks Mill lift station, and the costs of issuance. This is the first water and sewer series bond ordinance that follows the master bond ordinance that you approved in June. Our attorney in these matters, Gary Pope, was planning on being here this evening and unfortunately had a conflict, but promises us that he will be present for second reading to answer any technical questions you have about this bond issuance. So for City Council consideration in first reading is an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of water and sewer system revenue bonds in the principal amount not to exceed $4.5 million. And we do have our Finance Director, Kim Abney, and our Public Works Director, Michelle Jones, here this evening to answer any questions that you may have. And Mr. Attorney, Mr. Pope, will be here for second reading.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments or questions from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I sent an email to the city manager. On Capital 3, we had about $8 million for water, which was sewer, water system and sewer systems, and with the water supply system, that was to help change meters and fix links, but we took care of that with a previous ordinance. And I'd highly recommend that both Ms. Abney and then Ms. Jones take a look at that and transfer a good chunk of the $3.7 million out of that water system to sewer system. And that was an arbitrary split on those. It was one line item that we voted on. So I think we need to transfer that money and let Mr. Poole fix some more stuff. This is not part of this, but I'm just saying at the next meeting, and that requires council action because it is Capital 3. It's not a budgeted item. So I think that would be something that ought to be on the next agenda.
Very good. Could staff look at that suggestion? Yes.
That's a staff item, not, I brought it up here because we're voting on bonds and that would give us some more money to do.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor on first reading? Very good. That's unanimous. Moving down, new business number 2. This is a first reading of an ordinance accepting the FY 2016-17 audit. By title, an ordinance accepting the fiscal year 2016-2017 audited financial statements and authorizing variances to the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget ordinance. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the first reading of an ordinance accepting the fiscal year 2016-17 audit.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second?
Second, sir.
Councilwoman Price. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, our auditor, Malden & Jenkins, certified public accountants, have prepared the fiscal year 2016-17 financial audit that is required by state law and by city code. Mr. Miller Edwards of Malden & Jenkins reviewed the audit with counsel at the work session prior to this meeting. He reported that the city received an unqualified opinion with no material weaknesses and no instances of noncompliance material to the financial statements. So for City Council consideration is first reading of an ordinance to accept the fiscal year 2016-17 audited financial statements. And as I stated earlier, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Edwards is here with our Finance Director to answer any questions that you may have. I don't know if Mr. Edwards would like to make a few introductory comments, but he certainly is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Mr. Edwards, good evening. Welcome.
I do appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all. As John just mentioned, we did meet about an hour ago to talk in detail about some of the financial elements of the audit. Additionally, as he noted, we did give an unqualified or what we would call a clean opinion, and there were no findings, no material weaknesses, no non-compliance issues to report. Your financial statements look very good. You've got a very strong fund balance. Your fund balance is about 53.5% of your annual expenditures. That's very good when you look at the financial condition of the city at June 30th of any given year. Your pension plan, your single employer plan is very well funded. You do have some other things going on in the financial statements that are worth noting. Your fund balance is liquid. It's a good, strong, liquid fund balance in the general fund. All your other government funds look very good as well. One last thing to mention is your proprietary funds overall are cash flowing. They're showing good positive cash flows from operations, and that's a good thing as well. That being said, I'm here to answer any other questions that you all may have.
Mr. Edwards, I just want to thank you for your presence tonight, but also it is always good news to hear from your auditor that there's fiscal soundness in the way we operate our city. And so we thank you for bringing that glowing report. And as we stated, a lot of credit goes to our finance department, but also the leadership body as well of the city of Aiken. So we thank you for that report.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Comments from council?
I simply echo what Ms. Price just said, particularly would note Ms. Abney, but all of her staff and all of the years of good sound financial management by Ms. Abney, her folks, and the various city managers and administrators that we've had. It's all something to be very proud of that very few people on council can take any credit really for. So congratulations to you all for a job well done.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 3 under new business. Number 3 is the first reading of an ordinance to grant a franchise to the Aiken Electric Cooperative, Inc. for the use of right-of-way in the city of Aiken for providing electrical services to the citizens of Aiken. By title, an ordinance granting a franchise to the Aiken Electric Cooperative, Inc. for the use of a portion of the public right-of-way in the city of Aiken for the purpose of providing electrical utility services to the citizens of the city of Aiken. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the next 2 items, this item and the next item, deal with the possibility of extension of our franchise agreements with our 2 electric providers that have existing franchise agreements with the city. The first thing that happened is that almost a year ago now, staff decided to recommend to you that we not wait until the last minute, which unfortunately is usually the case with these types of agreements, and that we reach out to to providers and asked them to enter into negotiations to extend the franchise agreement. As your city manager, I've had a very close working relationship with both providers and both of their community liaisons, Beata Priesta and Scott Neely, and I cannot say enough about them publicly, about how accessible and how helpful they've both been to me, not only during the course of any given year, but certainly when there's a time of crisis, a hurricane, a storm. That's when our citizens count on us to get information to them as quickly as possible. And compared to other places that I've lived and worked, I cannot say enough about the availability and the help that these two individuals have given to me and to all of our department heads over the several years that I've been here. So I want to publicly acknowledge and thank them. And I also would like to acknowledge Mr. Gary Stooksbury and Mr. Keller Kissam, who are managers in these two entities who are responsible for working with us. They have been extraordinarily helpful in this process. And so what is in the city's best interest, in the residents of the city's best interest in this regard? One is to make sure that the franchise agreement continues. And we would be able to do that with the acceptance of these extensions. By the very nature of this industry, certainly in years past, in any area where you have competing companies, there's necessary built-in friction that has existed in the past. In our discussions early on, we brought both companies to the table and said, is there any way that we can address these issues so that there isn't a fight or a debate over every single building lot or any single building in the city? Can't we sit down and roll up our sleeves, and with the beauty of the advent of geographic information systems and technology, can we make these decisions within the franchise agreement so that there aren't these wars that are going on from time to time? And I was delighted that both companies stated their willingness to do that. And my understanding is that what they did is a first in the entire state of South Carolina, and it is a model that now is being replicated, I think, in 2 or 3 other areas presently in the state. So we wanted to try to address some of these territorial issues that always end up in dispute. One of the aspects of the existing franchise agreement that I didn't enjoy very much is that the franchise agreement called upon the city manager to be the resolver of disputes that took unnecessary time of mine away from my normal duties to try to address this. And so we tried to see if it was possible to identify territories so that this wouldn't be necessary. The third thing is that this is a funding source, and and I'm sure you know that we're at the maximum allowable in the entire state of South Carolina. We're at the maximum amount of revenue that a community can receive. So there's nothing more that we could do in terms of additional revenue. But as all of us know, we have many projects on the table. And it was decided when we decided to increase the franchise fee to the maximum amount, to be able to use that money for both infrastructure and specifically roads, sidewalks, bike paths and the like, and also public safety. And part of the funding source for our new public safety facility is utilization of the franchise fee. So our financial advisor said, if you're going to be using this money for the purposes of borrowing, that you might want to try to convince the two utilities to extend the length of the franchise fee, so that we would be able to, in the future, utilize the funds if needed, and that's a decision that a council would make, to do worthy projects, like the public safety building, like building a new road to help us solve some of the problems on Whiskey, for example. And to do that, the longer the term, the better for the city. So that, in a nutshell, are 2 or 3 of the major changes. We had the draft documents reviewed by both companies, and there are representatives here this evening that can answer any questions that you might have as it relates to them. But we also had the document reviewed by our legal team, and Mr. Smith is here to answer any legal questions that you may have. So we're asking for consideration for first reading, so that we can move forward and put into place long-term agreements well prior to the exhaustion of the existing franchise fees, so that this can be something that we can put beside us and move on to other worthy projects. We've probably worked, I'm going to say 8 or 9 months, or maybe even longer on this to get us to this point. And so our legal staff is here, as are representatives from the 2 companies, if you have any questions for them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clem. Is there any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
I have a couple questions. While I move to approve this is a 30-year agreement. And in the event there are changes, we can go in and modify this contract. You're saying that we're at the max in terms of our ask.
Yes.
Suppose the entire financial status change, where greater revenue is coming in. And I'm going to assume that both providers would want to be fair and want to modify or give a greater return to the taxpayers. Am I accurate on that, or it just keeps on going as it is based on the agreement that we signed today? We're locked into?
You would be locked into the 5%.
Okay.
I would remind the members of the council that this is South Carolina, and just as it might be likely in your mind that franchise fee maximum might be increased, it also might be reduced. But this would commit them for a period of time.
Okay.
So it goes both ways. And so we didn't really discuss with the 2 companies whether it would make sense to put language in, but if that's something that you're interested in.
If I could amend my statement, I will tell you that the agreement does have language in it that says to change the percentage of the revenue to which the franchise fee is calculated, the city must both, 1, amend this franchise ordinance by means of an amendatory ordinance solely addressed to that purpose, and 2, provide the company written notice including an attested copy of the amendatory ordinance at least 90 days prior to the next franchise fee payment being due. So if the legislature were to allow the city to increase the franchise fee, council would be able to consider that at a future date.
Okay. One other question too, and Kiara, if you don't mind coming forward. Should I say Ms. Priester?
Good evening, Ms. Priester.
Thank you for your presence and for what Aiken Electric Co-op does for its community. Underground wiring, new subdivisions, along with commercial properties, you're doing a lot. You are doing undergrounding now. Is that right?
That's correct.
How much have you done?
How much have we done so far?
Is that going pretty, are you doing a lot of it right now, or are you just getting started? Give us a status of how that's going.
I don't have those, I don't have that exact.
I don't need to know numbers, but you are doing it, in other words.
Yeah. Yes,
okay.
ma'am. We currently provide underground services, and that's what we're doing with some of our new members as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Scott, I'm going to ask you the same question too in terms of the status.
Are any other comments or questions from council?
Yes. I think when they say that, that's the service from the main line to the business. It's not undergrounding the main feeders. And if my statement is wrong, they need to correct it, but as far as I know, there's not any move afoot to put high voltage underground unless there's a joint agreement between the city and them.
I don't have any idea.
For instance,
Yeah.
on Lawrence, and then when we did that, that was a 50-50 split. So I agree with what they said. It's going from the main power line to the businesses and residential. That's all being done. But we don't want to think, we don't want the citizens to think all of a sudden everything on south boundary and these other streets are going to show up underground, because it's not.
Gotcha. All right, any other comments? All those in favor of first reading? And that's unanimous, thank you. Number 4, for new business, this is a first reading by title and ordinance granting a franchise to the South Carolina Electric and Gas Company for the use of a portion of the public right-of-way in the city of Aiken for the purpose of providing electrical and gas utility services to the citizens of the city of Aiken. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
second.
we have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Same comments, Mr. Mayor. I feel as strongly about Kiata and Gary as I do Scott and Keller. They have been very helpful to us, and the rationale is the same.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council? Councilwoman Price?
Scott, do you mind coming and giving us a status on your underground services across the state?
Good to see you all. Excuse me. So as far as undergrounding, the city of Aiken has a policy that applies to both electric utilities. And when we put new overhead primary, or where we would normally put in overhead primary in an area, in the city of Aiken, we have to put it underground. I'm talking about new areas, maybe a new subdivision that's built in the city of Aiken. If it's in our service territory, then that has to go underground. Obviously, that means all the services to homes, within that subdivision would also be underground. As far as converting existing overhead to underground, the only time that's really done is under the provisions of the non-standard service fund, which is actually part of the franchise agreement. And of course, that's the system where you have the 50-50 split. And of course, right now we're working a project on Meade Avenue. That's really the first in several years where the city has entered into a contract with us, and we'll be doing undergrounding there. And we have had discussions about other areas of the city. So when the city is ready to move forward with that, you actually do have a substantial amount of money in your non-standard service fund that's built up over the past few years. It's available to you. It's just a matter of prioritizing where you want to spend that money. As far as the franchise fee, if I could go back to that just for a moment, the way the franchise agreement reads is that you can't be paid more than the highest percentage paid to any other municipality served by SCE&G in the state. So if for some reason some other municipality somewhere else that SCE&G serves is paid 6%, then that would become automatically available to you all if you decided to increase that. I can tell you that 5% is the highest at the current time, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Because most of our franchise agreements have that same language, and it sort of creates an even playing field. And of course, the franchise fee gets passed on to the customer. So if you increase it, you increase the impact to the customer. Yes, sir.
That's okay.
Any other
Scott, are there other municipalities that have entered into a 30-year
Yes, ma'am.
agreement? Okay.
City of North Augusta.
Okay.
And we're doing this, as Mr. Clem mentioned, Aiken was part of that first wave, but our intention, we're working very closely with Aiken Co-op, and we're going, throughout Aiken County, Edgefield County, Saluda County, and then eventually this is going to go wherever SCE&G has electric service, which is, pretty substantial part of the state. Our intention is to go to all municipalities where we provide service and ask them to enter into this type of arrangement. So you all were at the very front of that, and we certainly appreciate that. Any other questions?
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor on first reading? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 5, this is approval and acceptance of a grant under the 319 non-point source NPS program from South Carolina DHEC for the Shaws Creek Watershed Water Quality Improvement Project. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councilman Ebner. Is there a second? Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the City of Aiken has been awarded a grant for the Shaws Creek Watershed Water Quality Improvement Project, Agricultural Sources. This grant is from the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, Bureau of Water, Section 319 Non-Point Source Program. Agricultural property owners and operators within the Shaws Creek watershed area will be targeted for installation of best management practices to reduce non-point source pollutants entering Shaws Creek, a source of water for our citizens. Agricultural lands with cattle, horse, poultry, orchard, and row crop production located adjacent to Shaws Creek will receive priority for installation for best practices. This project should improve and protect the water quality in Shaws Creek, which is a source of our city's water supply. The grant would provide $346,027.43 for this project, with the City of Aiken providing $115,631.86 and the landowner participants providing $115,219.76. The city's grant match would be provided by CPST-2, funding from Greenways and Open Space. So for City Council consideration is approval of acceptance of a grant from DHEC under the 319 program in the amount of $346,027.43, with the city providing $115,631.86 matching funds. Mr. Mayor, our CPST manager, Joy Gillespie, and our Public Works Director, Michelle Jones, are here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor?
I just want to thank our staff for going after these grants and helping with projects in our community.
Duly noted. Moving down to section 5 on our agenda, petitions and requests. Number 1 was pulled. Number 2 is a request to spend capital project sales tax 3 funds for sanitary sewer system modeling project. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I second.
Thank you, Councilman Ebner. Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, the engineering staff from the Department of Public Works has identified the need to obtain professional services for the development of a sanitary sewer system model of our 120 square mile area served by the city system. The system consists of 284 miles of sanitary sewer lines up to 36 inches in diameter, about 40 lift stations, and 6,750 manholes and pipe segments. The project would help to make informed decisions regarding proposed developments and implementation of the city's asset management program. It would also provide useful information to our engineering staff in making site plan reviews for developers. The engineering staff has reviewed the proposals received and is recommending Goodwin Mill Kaywood, Inc., GMC, to provide the service for a maximum fee of $349,000. It is estimated the project could be completed within 12 months from the date of notice to proceed. The engineering staff is requesting Council approve the award of the project to GMC. Funding for the project would come from CPST 3 funds in the amount of $349,000. So for Council consideration is approval to award the sanitary sewer system modeling project to GMC for an amount up to $349,000, with the funding coming from CPST 3 funds. And Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned before, DPW Director Jones is present, as well as Engineer Mike Prispolowicz, to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Yeah, can you explain to a sociologist what we're doing?
Yep. I'll ask Ms. Jones to come up. Good evening.
So you want a layman's explanation of
Yes.
what we're proposing?
I can understand.
Right. Essentially, the sanitary sewer system modeling project, GMC has been awarded the water system modeling project. So we're confident that essentially what they're proposing to do is look at our entire system, which we talked about 120 square miles of, you know, all of our sanitary sewer lines underground, as well as manholes, all the various infrastructure. They're going to look at that to determine what we can do from a capacity standpoint to plan for the future and identify projects that will then be able, that will know exactly what's needed from an improvement standpoint, repair, rehab, replacement, et cetera.
So
but
is this using cameras and stuff?
They will. Well, initially, no. There's 4 phases, or I believe 5 phases to the project. They'll start out with the hydraulic modeling of the entire system. Then they'll do field survey and data collection to determine exactly what's out there, and we'll incorporate that all into our GIS database. They'll build and expand models. And again, this is all incorporated into our GIS database, so that's an important component so that we have data. It's data-driven. They'll calibrate this model, then they'll do a demand model, which gets back to the capacity aspect of it, what's needed for future developments, all various things that are proposed for the city out into the future. They'll look at that to determine the demand that'll be put on the system, and then they'll provide a report. They'll consult with our engineering staff to then identify projects, actual projects that to help us get us where we need to be, get our sanitary sewer system where it needs to be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Michelle, this is the same, basically the same process we went through with the water, with the GIS modeling, is that correct?
Well, we're undergoing it now with the water system modeling project, which is also previously awarded to GNC. So we're hoping to get a more consistent evaluation of both systems.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 3 under petitions and requests. This is a request to spend hospitality tax funds for the historic railroad cut rehabilitation project. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Councilman Ebner. Is there a second?
Second.
And thank you, Councilman Homoki. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, in 2014, the City Council directed staff to apply for a federal hazard mitigation grant to address erosion along the southern side of the historic railroad cut wall between Chesterfield Street South and Newbury Street. We were awarded a grant in 2015 that consisted of 2 phases. Phase 1 was an analysis of potential mitigation solutions, and that work was completed. Phase 2 is the actual construction of the project. Due to a reduction of FEMA matching funds, the additional cost for the city could be up to $250,000. We were notified that FEMA was cutting back on its matching portion of this program. So we were asked to identify, Council Member Ebner requested that we undertake an analysis of where we might be able to fund the remaining portion of this needed project. And the recommended funding source is the hospitality tax funding. At the October 30th meeting, Council directed staff to evaluate the best sources of funding for this work. For City Council consideration is a request to spend hospitality tax funds to provide additional funding for Phase 2 of the historic railroad cut rehabilitation project.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
I have a question regarding whether this Phase 2 will fund the entire construction. John, will this be enough funds to
The additional 250 would give us the money to complete the construction project.
And this is in accordance with the hospitality law?
Yes, we checked. Attorney Gary Pope gave us a legal opinion that it was consistent with the law.
All those in favor? That is Councilwoman Price, Councilman Homoki, the mayor, Councilwoman Diggs, Councilman DeWar, Ebner 4. All those opposed? Councilman Mary. The motion carries. Number 4 under petitions and requests. This is a request from the Kiwanis Club to hang banners in the downtown to promote Aiken's Bacon and Brew. Is there a motion?
I so move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Comments from staff.
Mr. Mayor, this is a request on behalf of the Kiwanis Club to hang banners in the downtown area to promote Aiken's Bacon and Brews event to be held at the Newbury Street Festival Center on March 16th. The request is to hang banners at a location listed in the attached letter, but we had previously approved banners for another event on these dates, so some of the requested locations are not available. However, we can place the banners on the traffic poles in a different location if the council wishes to approve the hanging of the banners. So basically, we're asking you for the authority to negotiate with them. We all want to be supportive of our good friends at Kiwanis, but there's a conflict in terms of other events that have already been approved. So with your approval, we will have staff sit down with them and work this out.
Very good. Any comments from the audience? Sam, hey. Sherry, good evening.
I submitted the request, and I've been working with David Turno at ADPS, so we know which areas are taken and which ones aren't, so we're going to work with him, and he's going to say, here's what we have, here's what we don't have. So we already know that there's a conflict, but just being able to have those banners up to let people know that there's an event that's going to support our children in the schools for our SLP programs, which are leadership programs to help the kids develop leadership skills and to learn public community service. So I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Sherry.
Is this the first year for this event?
This will be the first annual Aiken's Bacon and Brews, and we hope it's going to become an annual event.
So you're going to have bacon and beer?
Lots of bacon dishes, we hope. Yes, there will be beer there, beer and wine, and non-alcoholic drinks as well, but hopefully both the bacon dishes will come along, and there's a lot of those throughout the country, so that we hope that it's going to grow and it'll be an annual event.
Sherry, you had us at bacon.
Bacon.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor?
I thought she'd break some bacon.
So that's unanimous.
Samples.
Number 5, petitions and requests. This is approval of a resolution accepting deed of dedication from Grand Oaks Villa, Inc. and utilities in Grand Oaks Condominiums Phase 1 by title, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a deed of dedication for utilities in Grand Oaks Condominiums Phase 1 from Grand Oaks Villas, Inc. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor, that we approve this resolution accepting the deed.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
I second.
A second. Comments from staff.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. John Curl, member of the Grand Oak Villas LLC, is requesting the city to accept a deed of dedication for water and sewer utilities, related equipment, and easements on property known as Grand Oaks Condominiums Phase 1. The Grand Oaks subdivision is located on University Parkway. The Engineering and Utilities Division staff has reviewed the deeds and the utilities in Grand Oak Condominiums Phase 1. They are recommending that the city accept the deed of dedication for the utilities and related equipment and easements. For council consideration is a resolution to accept a deed of dedication for the water and sewer utilities, related equipment, and easements on property known as Grand Oaks Condominiums Phase 1.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Number 6 under petitions and requests. This is approval of a resolution accepting deed of dedication of property in Deodore Plantation by title, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of property located in Deodore Plantation from Crowell and Company, Inc. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mark Gilliam is requesting the city to accept a quitclaim deed for a parcel designated as Tract A in the attached plat. The tract contains 3.87 acres and is located in Deodore Plantation. The property is located south of Pendula Court, approaching Amanda Court. The engineering staff has reviewed the deed and plat. They are recommending that the city accept the quitclaim deed for the parcel in Deodore Plantation. For council consideration is a resolution to accept a quitclaim deed for Tract A of in Deodore Plantation, Section 4, containing 3.87 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Councilman Mary?
Why would we take this piece of property? Why is it being given to us? Why would we take it?
Engineering staff. Michelle Jones.
Either someone from engineering or Ms. Jones, if you'd like. Welcome back.
Why would we take it? Well, of course, our engineering staff, they evaluate all of these requests that we receive for acceptance. This is one that had previously, back in February of 2011, it had been recommended that council accept a deed for Section 4 of Deodore Plantation to include the...
For the infrastructure, is that what you mean?
For the detention pond.
Okay.
Which is a portion of Pendula Court, but it did not include the 3.87 acres of this Tract A property, which, what I'm guessing, and based on our engineering staff's review, this should have been included and needed to have been included kind of in conjunction with the detention pond, and so now we're coming back.
Where, on that plat that we've got, where would the detention pond be in relation to, I mean, this is sort of a landlocked tract, right?
Is, and without seeing a blow up, you're asking where the tract is in relation to the detention pond?
Yeah, is the detention pond adjacent to it or something?
It should be, and I would almost need to see a blow up.
Look, if you see where Tract A is on that plat, on page 224 of the agenda, you see the Z on that property line?
Yes.
I believe the detention pond is on the other tract on the other side of that Z.
Where, okay. Where
That Z is there. That Z is there to show that those two lots are going to be combined.
I understand, yeah. And there's also a power line going across there, right?
Yep.
I just don't understand.
Why?
Yeah. And that's just a superfluous piece of property that they've got, and I just don't know that it's necessary for the ownership and maintenance of that detention pond. Does it provide the only access to the detention pond, maybe?
To my knowledge, I'd have to consult with staff, but it was requested sort of as a continuation of the previous request for acceptance for the detention pond.
There's somebody here.
I think Mike knows the answer, if I may. Yes.
Sorry about that.
Hey, Mike.
My name is Mike Kozlowitz. Part of this is part of the Hopeland Farms deal. The drainage from this pond is part of the deal that we're supposed to help out with the Hopeland Farms situation.
That's the lawsuit that we settled.
I know exactly what you're referring to.
So that was part of the agreement that we would take ownership of this and maintain it, and then we have to replace the outlet structure on it. So, and it's also adjacent to property that we own.
That was the pond, but the agreement was we'd take this Tract A also?
That's the pond.
The pond is on Tract A?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it just didn't reference that way.
Oh,
it just says it's just a tract of land.
And 3.87.
Yeah, that's...
So it's got a pond on it. If I draw a circle in the middle of it,
yes, sir. That whole tract.
Okay. All right, that's a different animal then. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
I approve, Mr. Mayor. We probably ought to rewrite this to what was just said. If this has
For the
from what
pond
the,
instead
what
of
the
a
city,
tract of land.
huh?
Could we continue this and
Continue
just
it
have
and
it?
get a rewrite to include all
More
of this in there, because it is landlocked now. And in the past, we have offered some of these tracts to the adjoining neighbors, and they were glad to get them.
Right.
So I think we need to rewrite this
We
and
need to be subtracting things from the city.
Mary, is that a motion to
It's
continue?
a motion to continue, Mayor. Thank you.
we got to cancel the other motion.
I just want to point out, the deed doesn't refer to a pond, the deed just refers to Tract A, and it talks about the 3.87 acres.
Right.
And so the deed is correct as it's written. So I don't
But
know
if you
how
said there's a pond on it as part of a lawsuit, that ought to be included in the write-up.
At least in
But
our,
he's saying 3.87 is
at least in our
the pond.
resolution.
What are you saying?
He said
Unless
it's a
I
pond.
misunderstood what the staff was saying.
they're just offering to deed us this
Well,
property.
yes, what's written is not wrong, it's just not as much
There would be no change to the deed.
No.
The deed is accurate the way it's written now. So I don't understand the need for the
Changing the
continuing.
Well, I
resolution.
concur with what you're saying, but the write-up, I would have thought included that there is a detention pond in the 3.87 acres as well as this part of the settlement of a lawsuit.
Not to belabor it, but Mike's comments will be part of the record. He's
Well,
explained.
You know my thoughts on to
We
you
have a
on what's in
motion,
the record.
we have a motion and a second to continue.
Do we have to
Yeah.
retract the other motion or not?
You don't have to retract the motion.
You don't?
No.
All those in favor of continuing?
Continuing.
And that's unanimous.
And
Thank
if
you.
I might, I won't be here to see it, but maybe an aerial photo or something that shows the actual pond on it would be great.
Thank you. Moving down to number 7 under petitions and requests. This is a request to approve a fireworks display at Palmetto Golf Club on November 17th, 2017. Is there a motion?
Okay.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Comments from staff?
Mr. Mayor, on Friday, November 17th, the Palmetto Golf Club is having an event to celebrate their 125th anniversary. They are requesting a brief 30-second to 1-minute fireworks display at the event. To be in compliance with our city code, the City Council needs to officially approve the event. Our Public Safety Department will work with the organizers to ensure that all applicable local and state regulations are followed. For City Council approval is a request for a fireworks display at the Palmetto Golf Club on November 17th, 2017.
Mr. Clem, any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Down for items of information, issues and updates. I would like to say at this time, we'd like to welcome in our attendance today. We have Councilman-elect Ed Giardo, Councilwoman Andrea Gregory, and Councilman-elect Ed Waltz with us. So, guys, welcome out there, and we look forward, I guess, at the next meeting for some swearing-ins, correct? So, congratulations to you. Are there any other comments from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We're losing 3 great men. Yes. And they've been a tremendous value to this council. Maybe we want to save it until the next council meeting. We'll do that.
We'll still have opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you tonight, so you can't say anything nice.
I've got a comment. Basically, this is effectively my last council meeting, because I believe if we have another one this month, I'll be in Washington, D.C. First of all, when I first got elected, I was at large, and what really flattered me was, even though I became a district or a councilman, I still kept getting calls from the people at large, which I thought was pretty good. The second thing is I want to thank the staff. I mean, I cannot believe how professional our staff is. You and our predecessors and the fellow council members. I think we really conducted business well. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was watching another city's council meeting. It ended in fisticuffs.
We can do that tonight.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And I also want to thank, the constituents. And 99.4% of all the emails, telephone calls, and text messages I've received have been nice. Let's not talk about that 0.06%. It's been a very enjoyable 8 years, and to the constituents, stay tuned. There's a lot of good things coming down the road. I'm not going to be here, but I feel you're going to like them, and I'm going to leave my seat in able hands. Andrea Gregory.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
You going to be here, Philip?
Next meeting? I'm going to be here. I'm hoping for another free meal.
I do want to remind everyone that November 20th, we have a work session on pension reform from 4 to 6. For existing and new council members, oncoming council members, make sure you have that date and time down. Any other comments?
We need a motion for executive session?
At this time, I'll entertain a motion for City Council to go into executive session pursuant to Section 30-470A1 of the South Carolina Code of the Discussion of Persons Regulated by City Council. Specifically, the City Council will go into executive session for the purpose of conducting the annual evaluations of the city manager and the city attorney. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Have a motion, a second. All those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous.